Okay, well, let's get started and we can have folks trickle in and join as they come. So welcome everyone. My name is Rosie, and we also have Hannah here from the calculator support team. Welcome to the last and final cohort of the semester. Thanks, we made it to this part of the journey. And today we'll kind of be talking around how to wrap things up. So let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, so here is the agenda overview. We have our introductions to start us off, and then we'll be getting into the calculator support. So unlike our previous cohort meetings, we won't be going over a food system issue, and we'll be diving just straight into the support section, where there's a lot we'll be talking about today. And we'll be reviewing the exit process, the researcher data check, product shifts, assessment, transition, and sharing results. And lastly, we'll get into next steps moving forward. Cool, so to start us off on our cohort meetings, we do a round of introductions. And for this, we ask y'all to use the chat. So if you can find the chat box on Zoom. And if you can introduce yourself through the chat box, sharing your name, what school you are at, and the question for today is, what's your favorite dish to cook for your friends, or just you? And I'll give y'all a minute to share. Cool. All right, so I'll read just a few of these. There's Clarissa from Johns Hopkins, was making vegan chocolate chip cookies for friends, rice for herself. Cool. We have Ray from McAllister College, like making mochi. Abby from University of Vermont was making salsa for friends on Taco Tuesday. Ooh. Emily and Teresita cook spaghetti. Nice. So without getting into all of these, I think I will let y'all take a minute to just read and get a sense of who we've got on board today. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names and faces, which is really exciting to get to this point because we're spread out all across the country, and often some people are doing work individually, and that can feel isolating. And so part of us kind of sharing the space together is to become more familiar with folks that are doing the same thing that you're doing across the country. Cool. Okay. So I think we got everyone on to introduce themselves. Oh. And we can transition into doing our pop quiz. So this is something that we've been doing in other cohort meetings, just touching on like content from the previous meeting. So yeah, today's question is true or false? Historically, agriculture workers in the US have been brought in from other countries with vulnerable populations. Cool, and some of you are already typing in your response. So yeah, this again was pulled in from a previous meetings content around immigration and labor in the US food system, where we learned that immigration and labor has been integral part of the food system since the inception of the country, you know, dating back to slave labor in the field, slaves from Africa, and even to as most recent as within this century of Mexican farm workers that were legally allowed to come into the country through the Bracero program, which was a program that was set up by the US government and the Mexican government to provide labor in the US fields. Cool. So our next question is true or false? Historically, agricultural workers in the US have always been a disenfranchised group of workers. And I'll give you guys a minute. Cool, thanks guys. So true. Again, what we learned from you know, last meeting was that, you know, because of the kind of immigrant status that a lot of agricultural workers historically have kind of held, because of this, you know, they have been excluded from important labor laws, or you know, even kind of like their like credibility to speak out on this because of their non-resident status or non-citizen status. Cool, thanks guys. Great, so now I'll be passing it over to Hannah to talk to you guys about finishing up your assessment.
Awesome, cool. So this is a really exciting call. It's our last cohort call of the spring. And most of you have been working really hard on real estate calculator assessments throughout this spring, if not throughout this fall and this whole year. And so what we're going to go over right now is briefly the timeline and the exit process for wrapping up your assessments at some point in the next month or so. Rosie, you want to jump to the next slide? Cool. So this is the timeline that we've looked at each of our cohort meetings. There are 2 research deadlines. The first is on April 21st, which is about 3 weeks from now. And the second is on May 12th. The reason that these deadlines are outlined in the way that they are is that it takes about 2 weeks after each research deadline to go through the whole exit process and to make sure that you get your results. So if you need your results by the end of May, or by the beginning of May, if you have an earlier end to your semester, we'd encourage you to finish your research by the April 21st deadline. If your semester continues, for example, through May or June, you can think about the later research deadline of May 12th. But make sure to leave at least 2 weeks between when you wrap up your assessment and when you expect to have your results ready by. The last deadline that we've noted on here is annual progress reports for any signatory campus that has formally committed to 20% real food by 2020. You need to turn in annual progress reports by June 1st, including your real food percentages. So that is the deadline that we should be keeping an eye out for. If for some reason you think that you won't be able to meet either the April 21st or May 12th deadline, or you're intending to continue your calculator assessment into the fall semester or into the summer, please reach out to us ASAP so that we know when you're planning to wrap up your assessment by, and we can be ready to support you in completing your results. Cool, next slide. Great, so here's an overview of the exit process. It looks a little bit different than it has in past years. So the first thing that you'll need to do is to review all of your data using the research review checklist, which we will go over now and then send to all of you after this call. It's basically like a self-check to make sure that that all of your data looks good and meets the real food standards. The second step is to make sure that all of your data has been uploaded to your profile on the Real Food Calculator website. We'll go over that process as well. Third, you'll need to email us at calculator@realfoodchallenge.org to let us know that your assessment is ready for review. We'll review your assessment, and within 1 week, you'll receive an email with feedback. You'll need to make the appropriate revisions to your assessment and email your spreadsheet with those changes back to calculator@realfoodchallenge.org. We'll double check it and send you an email confirming that all of your data has been checked. Next, you'll need to edit the data in your online assessment or re-upload your data so that all of your revisions from the review are reflected in your online assessment. If it's helpful for us to clear your assessment entirely and you can just re-upload it all in one spreadsheet, we can do that as well. And you'll just need to email us to let us know to do that. The sixth step is to fill out the exit survey, which is an overall review of the Real Food Calculator process and an opportunity for you to share your feedback to inform how the process works in future years. And then you will have your results and you will be able to celebrate and share with others on your campus about how much real food is being purchased. Great, Rosie, let's jump to the next slide. Cool, this is just another way to look at it. Look at the steps again. You got the researcher review checklist, uploading the data to the calculator website, emailing us to let us know your assessment's ready for review. These light blue steps are the steps that Rosie and I will be doing as your calculator support team, reviewing our data, emailing you a spreadsheet with corrections. You all will make those revisions, send us the final spreadsheet, edit the data in your online assessment, complete the exit survey. We'll approve your assessment and you'll be able to celebrate your results. Great, and we will send all of this out in an email afterwards as well so that you have these steps written out. Well, Rosie, next slide. Cool, so let's talk about the process of uploading. For some of you, this may be familiar, and for some of you, this may be new. So I'm going to screen share what this uploading process looks like. Great. So this is the Real Food Calculator website, and this is a Real Food Challenge account on the website. So it's a model of a campus. So let's say I'm working on my 2015-2016 assessment. What I'm going to do is scroll down to where it says Uploads and click on the red button that says New. This will direct me to a page where I can note down the month that I'm uploading, the vendor name of the spreadsheets that I'm uploading, however you want to identify the set of spreadsheets that you're uploading. So I'm going to call this October 2015 as a summary of all of my October data. Then I go to Choose File, and that is where I can go in to my Finder and choose the file to upload, and then click the button that says Create Upload. Now there are 3 different tabs here in the uploading page. The first is Incomplete. This is any item that didn't have all of the information it needed in order to be complete. If this happens, you'll get a little red exclamation point here. So for example, in this case, the issue is that there was no designation for whether or not it qualified as local. That's this first little icon here. And so if I click on that little exclamation point, I can go in and I can check off, no, that product was not local, save it, and now that will be able to enter into my assessment. Everything should end up in the section that says complete. You should also check the row that says rejected. If anything is rejected, then that means that there is an error. And you'll need to go back. Here it says cost must be a number. That means either my rows are off or there's something in there that's not a number. And so you should double check and make sure that you go back, figure out any errors in your spreadsheet, and make sure that nothing is incomplete or rejected and everything is complete. Now, when you go through the uploading process, I'm going to share you on a different spreadsheet right now, which is our sample spreadsheet. So for anything that says that, for example, yes, for local and community-based, there is a row next to it that says this local description. Next to fair, there's a row that says fair description. Next to ecological, a row that says ecological description. The description for humane and the description for why a product is disqualified. As you did your research, you may have taken notes in different ways. You know, this thing is organic, this product is 250 miles away, this is disqualified because of CAFOs. There are very specific codes that you need to use for each description. We will be sending out a template spreadsheet with all of the codes in that spreadsheet. So you can use that spreadsheet as a way to make sure that you have letter for letter all of the proper codes for the description. So for example, it has to say USDA organic instead of just organic in order for the real food calculator to recognize it. This is an important step of the process before you upload. As you go through that process, we encourage you to take a look at the guide to uploading. So let's return to the Real Food Calculator website. In the top right-hand corner, it says resources. If you click on that, you should see a link that says guide to uploading. That's a PDF that you can download that goes over the whole uploading process, and that will be a really helpful resource to you as you go through this. Great, so let's say that you've uploaded all of your data to your assessment. When you do that, you should see a bar here with a real food percentage, but the little RFC button should be in gray, meaning that your data is all present, but your assessment has not yet been reviewed. Another way to check that all of your data is present is to click on each month. You should see a line that says progress. This is telling you what percentage of the total budget for that month's data has been uploaded. So here it says 99.95%. It looks like almost all of my data was uploaded except for the couple of lines that were incomplete or rejected. So I can go back in and check those lines. If your progress says, for example, 65%, you might be missing a lot of your invoices. If it says 200%, there's a chance that you uploaded your invoices in duplicate. So this is a way to check and make sure that all of the invoices that you've uploaded or all the reports that you've uploaded in spreadsheets equal your total budget for each month. If you haven't set the total budget or you think the total budget might be off, you can click this little red button that says edit next to the total budget, and you can update your audit with the proper budget for that month. So I would need, for example, here there's not a budget for the month yet, I would need to edit and set that budget. So once you have 100% of your data uploaded for both or all of the months that you're assessing, the next step is to export your data in order to review it. You can do that by clicking this round circle button that says export data. and that will download a spreadsheet that includes all of your data for that month, and you would need to do that for each month that you're assessing. In order to review your assessment, I would click on that month of data. I'm going to now share you on that screen. And now, something that we find really helpful in reviewing your data is to highlight the top row, click Layout. You can also do this in a Google spreadsheet or in other formats. And you want to freeze the top row so that when you move the columns up and down, the top row doesn't move. Let's do that again. Okay, so this top row needs to be frozen. See, it doesn't move. You can also create a filter. That's often something that looks like a funnel, a button. And this essentially creates a drop-down menu for every column. So you can select for anything that says yes for local, for example, and it will just highlight your local items. Using filters is a really helpful way to look at different pieces of your assessment. So for example, if you wanted to look at any errors you might have with your local dairy, you could go to something that says yes for local and yes for dairy. So this is a way to get at some very specific pieces of your assessment. So now what we're going to do is go over what are the things that you need to look for when you're checking your research. Rosie, can you reshare the PowerPoint? Thanks. Great, so to the next screen, the next slide. Great, so assuming you have uploaded all of your data, you've ensured that you're actually 100% done, you've exported your data, and you're gonna check your research. So Rosie, next slide. Cool. So you're gonna wanna check your data in all 4 real food categories. The first is local and community-based. So what we're gonna be doing is sending you a checklist with all of the common errors to be looking out for when you review your assessment. We'll go over some of them right now, but we'll also email this out to you so you can use it on your own assessments. So for example, you can sort your spreadsheet for local and community-based and look at any of the baked goods. And double check, does the vendor use local ingredients? If they do, you want to make sure that the description reads multi-ingredient product, 50% within 250 miles. That's the code to say half of the ingredients, at least, are local. If they don't use local ingredients, then they can't qualify as local and community-based. You can do that check off the box, and move to the next. For grocery items, it's going to be important to check also, do they use local ingredients? If so, is it 50% local ingredients? And it's also important to confirm that it's a small or medium-sized business that grosses less than $50 million a year. For eggs, meat, and poultry, some things to look out for are to confirm that the farm it's coming from does not qualify as a concentrated animal feeding operation. The assessment tips are a great resource here. And also to confirm that it's a small or medium-sized farm or business that grosses less than $15 million a year. For seafood, for fish, it's important to confirm that local fish is coming from owner-operated boats. For tea and coffee, it's worth double checking that there are no local tea or coffee items with the exception of local herbal teas, because even if coffee, for example, is roasted locally, it can't actually be sourced locally. For dairy, similarly, it's important to confirm that dairy farms are not CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, they're small or medium-sized farms and businesses, and that if it's a multi-ingredient product like ice cream or yogurt, you have that description. For produce, you want to double check and make sure that anything that's marked as local is reasonable for the season that you're in. So for example, if you're in the Northeast and you're assessing February, the only produce that you should see are winter storage crops like potatoes or apples. All right, up next, looking at the fair category. If your campus is contracted to Sodexo, Aramark, Chartwell, or Bon Appetit, it's worth checking if the tomatoes came from Florida, and if they do, they should be certified fair by the Fair Food Program. If you see anything marked as fair that's eggs, fish, meat, or poultry, those would be in error because there aren't any certifications recognized in the Real Food Guide for those categories. All right, next slide. For humane, you can take a look at, again, there's many categories like beverages, fish, grocery items, produce, or tea and coffee, that it's not possible for there to be certified humane products within them. It's important to note that fish cannot be certified humane in the Real Food Standards. And so if you see any of those, it's important to check them and change them. Lastly, the ecologically sound category, one specific thing to look out for is that for fish or seafood that is certified by the Marine Stewardship Council, it's important to confirm that both the distributor and your university carry the Marine Stewardship Council's chain of custody certification. This isn't too common, but there are a couple of universities who carry it, and that would be necessary in order for the seafood to qualify as ecologically sound. So throughout this, you've been checking for disqualifiers. One other key disqualifier to look for, even for local produce, is to make sure that items that are commonly genetically modified are made without the use of genetically modified seeds, which means that local tofu, soy, canola oil, corn, or squash, for example, would need to either be ecologically sound or non-GMO certified. I see a question, why does the campus need to be certified to use the Marine Stewardship Council's label? That is actually the way in which the Marine Stewardship Council's certification now works. It didn't used to be that way, but they require a chain of custody certification at every level of the supply chain in order for an institution to claim that they are purchasing seafood certified by the Marine Stewardship Council. It's a great question. Cool, Rosie, next slide. Great, so I want to go over the last piece of the review process and then we'll take some time for questions. All right, so this last piece is what the review, so once you've reviewed your data, you've made any changes that you can see, and you've sent us an email to let us know it's time for us to review, we're going to do basically the same thing that you did. We're going to export your data, we're going to sort it and check for a lot of these questions. As we do that, I'm going to share a new spreadsheet with you. We are going to add a couple of new lines. So we're going to add 3 new columns, what you see here. On the left-hand column, if there's anything that we need you to verify, so we need to know, for example, to double check that you have, we need to double check, for example, have you confirmed that this farm doesn't qualify as a concentrated animal feeding operation? We're going to mark in this left-hand column, it's going to say verify. We're going to ask you the question that you need to verify. And as soon as you've checked it, so either you've made a change that you need to make, or you've just double checked to say, yes, I did this research, and it looks all good to go. Then you're going to check off, there's a little drop down here, you're going to switch the question mark to a check. So basically what we're doing is as we go through the spreadsheet, we're going to be noting anything that needs to be verified, and then we're going to filter the sheet so you're only seeing the things that you need to check. There's obviously a lot more data in this assessment than what you see here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send you back your spreadsheet with these 3 new columns. One that says verify or fix. We'll say fix if it's like an impossible permutation. For example, a gross produce that's humane, or we think something is miscategorized. We're going to say verify if we just need to double check that you've done that extra step of research to ensure, for example, that something is not coming from a concentrated animal feeding operation or is coming from a small and medium-sized enterprise. This is an important step that we're adding in because we want to make sure that everything that you all are counting as real food meets all of the real food standards. that it's consistent across campuses and consistent from year to year. So once you have reviewed your data, once we've reviewed your data, we're going to send this to you. You're going to go back in and make sure that every question mark turns into a check, either because you've made the necessary change or because you've confirmed that it's true. And then you're going to send it back to us. And that's our way to know that you have gone through this checklist in a really in-depth way, and that all of your research is reflective of what is in the Real Food Standards. That will then mean that you can make those changes directly into your assessment, either through re-uploading this spreadsheet, and we can clear your assessment for you so you can upload it all at once, or through going back into your assessment if you know where the errors were and making those changes directly online or in the specific spreadsheets that you had uploaded. Great, so I'm going to pause here for questions. I see one question here already from Carolina about non-GMO project certified, and you're correct. Non-GMO project certified is not sufficient to qualify a product as real food, but it is enough to let you know that a local corn, for example, is not coming from genetically modified seeds and therefore would not be disqualified as real food. It doesn't necessarily mean that it counts, but it means it won't be disqualified. So that's a great question. Any other questions on this exit process? Or on any of the review steps?
Also, this is a good
in case anything comes up.
Yeah, and so right, just a moment to pause and absorb the information. I know it's a lot, but also if you guys need us to go back to any of these slides, now would be a good moment to ask.
Cool. We'll also be sending out the recording of this webinar, as well as the all of the resources that we're sharing here today so that you can reference them as you go forward. See one confirmation of a question here. Corn would not qualify as real food or local, not unless you can verify that it uses non-GMO seeds, or if it's certified organic, for example, has one of the ecological sound certifications, then you know that it would not be made using or grown using genetically modified seeds. How do you check for grocery items being local? You'll have to look up the company and make sure that they use at least 50% local ingredients. So this includes items like, for example, pasta that might use local flour, or a salsa or a canned tomato that uses local tomatoes. And you would need to look up those companies online or call them up and ask them where they source their ingredients from. I see a question about what percentage of zucchini and squash is genetically modified. A lot of it in the US currently is. I don't have the exact percentage off the top of my head. I'm sure that would be interesting if you come across that, and we'll love to be able to share that out. But it's enough of it that you can assume that most of what you come across is, unless it's not GMO verified. Great, well, if any other, I see one more. If a farm isn't listed as a concentrated animal feeding operation on the EPA's website, can we assume that they're not a CAFO? That varies state by state. So you'd need to look at who certifies concentrated animal feeding operations in the state. Sometimes that is the EPA, sometimes it is another agency, and you'd have to ask them where they keep their listings. And then that would be the best way to know whether or not a farm qualifies as a concentrated animal feeding operation. There are some states that actually don't have up-to-date lists or don't have up-to-date CAFO licensing. And so there are more specifications on that in the assessment tips, which you can find on the website. And to clarify here, if something is organic, then yes, you can assume that it's non-genetically modified. Great, I know we're getting into the nitty-gritty here, but these are great questions as you're wrapping up your assessment. Great, I see a question. There are a few items they weren't sure whether they would qualify as produce or grocery. Yeah, so there is a list in the assessment tips, in the guide to uploading of what products qualify in different product categories. But if it's not clear from there, yes, you can absolutely email us, calculate@riskofchallenge.org, and we can help you to work through that. A clarification here, the research data and graphs will not be available until after the revisions are made and cleared by the RFC team. That is correct. I see a question, could you call up the farm and ask if they're a concentrated animal feeding operation? Yes, you can do that. You can call them up and ask them either about the size of their farm and their practices, or you can call them up and ask them if they have a designation as a license as a concentrated animal feeding operation. And yeah, they should answer that for you. And I think there's actually a script in the assessment tips for how to make those calls or do that outreach.
Cool. Thanks for all your questions, everyone. So I think now we'll transition into talking about product shifts, but you know, these questions around research are really important, and we'll also have a time at the end of the meeting to get more into any of the lingering questions. Okay, let's talk about product shifts. So now that you're well into your research and have a better picture of where your food from campus is coming from, you can start thinking about product shifts. This is where all the hard work of your researching you've done comes in handy. You're a mini expert of your campus food system. You have an amazing opportunity to use all the data you've collected and assess to start thinking about the ways that you can bring more real food on campus. So some questions to consider are, is there a local farm that you could be purchasing more from? Is there a company that you could source from that has an organic alternative? So when thinking about food products and making the shift to real food, it's helpful to get a sense of high-hanging fruit and low-hanging fruit in regards to product shifts and not actual fruit. Haha. High-hanging fruit are products that are not currently available and have a much higher impact on the local or national food system because they require investment in new infrastructure or changes in the current supply chain. Low-hanging fruit are products that can be easily replaced with a comparably priced and readily available real food alternative. All right, so let's take a closer look at high-hanging fruit. So there's two types. The first, or type 1, is a product that is especially bad for some reason. So like bananas. So for example, bananas are the second most chemically intensive agricultural product in the world. And this is where workers are usually forced into bad labor conditions with little pay. So shifting away from this product would cause an impact because you're shifting away from something that is really harmful, and you're taking a public ethical stance on an issue. Type 2 of high-hanging fruit is a product where shifting towards the alternative would have an especially large impact on your community. For example, shifting towards a product that could create an entire supply chain in your local community. So, that would mean there are more farm jobs, more processing jobs, etc. Right, so here's a model process for product shifts. First, you need to identify products based on your calculator research. Then you need to research. So the research doesn't end with just looking at the invoices, but then actually looking into the food products that you want to make the switch to, articulate the issues there, identify opportunities, partners, and resources. Then write about that, write about your research, and share a report. Educate the campus community, organize them around the change and the impact that it could bring. And then doing the thing, implementing the change. After that change has been implemented, you want to measure your results. So evaluating, what the differences are, where you started out to where you ended up. And then lastly, celebrating the success, which is, often it's the part we skim over, but, probably one of the most important as well. Okay, so here's just some tips on best practices. Could be to focus on small transitions, for example, like beverages, coffee, juice, etc. Beverages, just in general, non-perishable dry goods could be a good start. Also, working with vendors, distributors or producers that already provide real food. And building direct relationships with farmers, and then organizing to support them. Cool. So here are some questions you should consider asking your dining manager or chef for future opportunities in introducing new producers that share real food values and bringing them onto your campus. So some questions could be, what does your menu planning cycle look like? Is it weekly, monthly, quarterly? And this is also something that you could pull from your baseline survey, but it wouldn't hurt to ask dining again and kind of have some more communication there. Another question, how do you add new vendors? Can they easily add new direct vendors, or do they only use a set number of distributors? Do you have a written list of specs for ingredients? Are these flexible? How flexible are your contracts with vendors? What does your university food service provider require of their vendors? So insurance or food safety certification, these kind of things. Okay, great. So now we will be hearing from researchers from Johns Hopkins University and Occidental, and hearing their story on product shifts, and just sharing with us their best practices, so you guys can have some ideas on some steps to take and to move forward with, into making the changes on your own campus. So first, we will hear from Clarissa from Johns Hopkins University.
Hi, everyone. Really great to join you all in the cohort study or meeting today. But yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about what it's been like working as a product shift intern at Hopkins. And just to give you a little context to what our school is like in terms of the dining structure. So we have our dining department, and then they contract out to Bon Appetit Management Company. So mainly the people that work with the dining department, in the dining at Hopkins, are our dining director, Bill Connor, and then the manager, the regional district manager, and the executive chef that work for Bon Appetit. So just in the past, the way that we've like kind of done product shifts for and deciding what we want to shift is we do use our calculator results. And something that we've actually started doing this year is someone who is in Real Food Hopkins wrote this code that will automatically run through the spreadsheet that you can download from the Real Food Calculator website. And then it goes through and identifies like the top 10 products that we buy in each category. So in beverages and tea, coffee and poultry, dairy, etc. And then we look at those top 10 items and see like which ones we can make a lot of impact with, since those are like the ones that we spend the most money on. And if it's not real already, those are the ones that we do a little more research on. And this is actually something that I hope to contact you all a little bit later down the road once we get the code all like fixed up and everything, because I think that everyone could use it if it's helpful in order to do the same type of analysis, data analysis on that. And I actually had a couple examples in mind that Rosie mentioned one of them. This semester, or this past year, actually, we've been trying to get fair trip bananas on campus. And because for a couple of reasons, one, our fair percentage is pretty low. And we wanted to make like more meaningful shifts as we get closer to our goal for 2020. And just to walk you through the process of what that's been a little bit like. It's been kind of difficult in a lot of ways, but I kind of first started out by talking to people at Equal Exchange, and then they told me that Four Seasons was their main distributor for their bananas. And so I contacted people at Four Seasons, looked into using the calculator data, how many bananas we bought every week, for how much the unit price was and everything, talked to actually all the Bon Appetit managers and the executive chef along the way from the beginning process really up until now, where we're still struggling a little bit, just to keep everyone in the loop. So I did some initial research on that, saw how much the price increase would be, and then presented all that information to the regional district manager of Bon Appetit, in which he was either going to be like, yes, we'll do it, or no, we won't. And initially he was like, yes, we'll do it. Like the prices increase, it's not too much. We actually also looked into some ways to cut down our cost spending for cereal was the one that we actually did. So we switched from like name brand cereal from like General Mill or something to a conventional cereal, or like a generic cereal, I guess. And it's actually saved us money that we could allocate towards spending more money on the fair trade bananas and possible other real food shifts too. But the roadblocks that we've kind of run into there are some miscommunication between actually the distributor of Four Seasons and the executive chef. So something that I've definitely learned from that is that I have to stay like in constant communication with both sides, and maybe also set up more meetings where we can do a conference call between like the executive chef and the regional district manager, myself, and the representative or the vendor. So that way nothing's lost in translation, and that there isn't a bunch of like miscommunication or people getting frustrated with things, because I've seen that happening a lot lately. And then another product shift that we have been working on are actually local salad greens. And we actually had local salad greens before, but our old company, they went under. And now we are looking for a new vendor in the area. And with that, product shift, we knew that we wanted more local salad greens. So we went on the internet, like literally just searched local salad greens in Maryland, and then like found a huge list of vendors, called a few of them, and then just followed up with um, followed up with them to see like what their price was, whether they could like handle the distribution and everything. And just got to know the vendors a little better. One of them actually just came to our food systems working group meeting, and we got to meet them, and they were able to meet the managers from the dining department too, just to get the conversation going. And now we're just going to work on some follow-up and making sure that we can stay accountable to them and they can stay accountable to us. And that product shift has been going relatively well. And I think just in general, best practices are to do a lot of research in terms of like what exactly the shift will look like once we've completely shifted over, for both price, what it will look like for the producer, and establishing like good relationships between everyone involved. And then challenges, I would say, are just like keeping constant communication. So making sure we like stay really, really consistent with the communication between everyone, I would say is the biggest challenge. Yeah. I don't know if that was what you were looking for exactly. Yeah, if you have any questions, I guess you can type them in.
Cool. Thanks,
Great,
Krista.
thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Go ahead, Hannah.
No, awesome. I was just going to say, let's take a few minutes, and if you have any questions for Clarissa about those product shift processes, now's a great time to ask. I see a question from Clem at San Francisco State University. Did you write a report for the product shift?
Okay. For that question, for the banana product shift, we generated a report that was mainly just like dollars, so they would know the dollar shift for that. And that actually is something that I'm going to revisit. I was thinking, because we've been having a little more trouble with the whole banana product shift right now, I actually am thinking about generating a more comprehensive report as to like the reasons why we're shifting, and doing like an in-person presentation to the managers and the chefs, so they completely understand where we're coming from. Because I think that is something that maybe we could like do a little more education with them on, because I think they understand like to some extent the reason why we're doing it, but not fully like the full depth of what it means for us to get fresh bananas at Hopkins. As for the generic cereal, we used a brand called Malt O'Meal. I can send the exact, actually, I don't know exactly how it's spelled, but I'll look it up right after this and type it in the chat box so you can look that up. And it's owned by Post Holdings Company. And it saved like a really decent amount of money. I don't exactly know the dollar amounts off the top of my head, but it was like more than we needed savings for the bananas. It was like less than half of what we paid for like General Mills cereal. So it's worth looking into if you're looking for some cost saving techniques. When did we create Fizzwig? I don't know exactly when Fizzwig started. I think it's been a couple years in the making. And now it's pretty established. We have at least one meeting every semester between the dining department, undergraduate students at Hopkins, different professors and faculty members. And we also invite as many producers as we can. This last Fizzwig meeting, we had like 5 different producers that we get food from around the area. And it's just really great for like open conversation about everything that we do. But yeah, I think that kind of started whenever we started doing the calculator, essentially. Do we have any problems getting? Yeah, so in terms of getting fair bananas in the right stage, this is like part of the reason why we're having such big issues, because they want bananas to be delivered at least 3 times a week here. And we're having trouble meeting the delivery minimum is what we're running into, because the distributor, Four Seasons, they want at least $800 a product ordered in order for them to deliver to Hopkins. And we can't just get that with bananas. So getting them in the right stage is kind of an issue. Something that I've heard as a solution is that they do at Goucher, which is another college in town, is they only get bananas 1 time a week. And then it's like a banana day, and everyone like knows it's banana day and is really excited about it. And that way they don't have like bananas being like overripe or underripe, because they just only have them the 1 day of the week and like everyone wants them that day. And then for the local salad green vendors, what happens at Bon Appetit, I don't know how it's like for other companies, but what they can do is they purchase it with a P card instead. So instead of doing it through their approved vendor list and through an invoice, they just purchase it with a credit card. And then that way you can like basically avoid the whole approved vendor list. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. Oh, wait, sorry. Something just came up. Okay. As for the meetings with the executive chef and the different managers, I try to meet with them at least like every other week. Usually I'll meet with the regional district manager and the executive chef in the same meeting space, since they both work in the same office and like are very close to each other, work closely together anyway. And I'll meet with them at the same time. And I try to do it at least every other week just so we can stay really, really updated, because sometimes they like do things and don't tell me about it. And it's really like kind of frustrating in some ways, because they also like make decisions like on their own in terms of product shifts, and like sometimes it's like fine and other times I'm just like, why? But yeah, so just I think every other week is like a baseline. And then for the dining director, we also do meetings with him every other week as the calculator team in general too, so we can all stay updated on that, because he's very supportive and is like always like, if you need support, like please come and ask me for it. So we all stay on the same page. And then for how many interns our school employs, we have, I want to say 5 calculator interns, and they all work somewhere within the range of like 2 to 10 hours a week, depending on who the person is. Yeah. And we all get paid too, which is really nice. It's it's already institutionalized.
Great. Thanks so much. Clarissa, these are amazing stories for us all to be learning from, what you all are doing out at Hopkins. And would it be okay if people have more questions for them to send them your way?
Yeah, of course. Please send me more questions if you want to. I'll type in my email right now. Actually, yeah, if you're interested in the whole generic cereal switch, it's like a nationwide thing, posters all over the place. So yeah, feel free to shoot me an email. I actually have to sign off now. I have another meeting, if that's okay. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Clarissa.
Well, Rosie, over to you.
Awesome. Okay, a lot of good info. And now we will be hearing from Sammy from Occidental College in Southern California. I'll pass it over to you, Sammy. And Sammy, I think you're muted right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay.
And
yes,
can you see me, or because my light's not on, but
we can't see you. We can just hear you.
okay. I don't know how to fix that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and speak anyway. So I go to Occidental. It's just a small school like Johns Hopkins, about 2,000 students. We have a self-operated dining, campus dining, which is really nice because it means that I get to work with the administration along with the other interns. We're also employed, and we've built there's a lot of, everyone kind of knows about the Real Food Challenge that works for campus dining and is really supportive of it, which is super nice. We are a debit system, so everything you buy is charged just for that item, which also gives us more freedom, because if we get organic salad mix, then we can charge that higher than the conventional salad mix. So it gives us more options. So a couple of the things that we've had a lot of success with is salmon, because salmon is such a popular item and it's a standard in our dining halls. We were able to switch it to Monterey Bay Aquarium approved salmon. The students didn't like it originally, so then we had to switch to a different one, and then eventually that worked out. And that's made a really big impact. Last year we had like 54% of our fish was real food. because of that. We also have the advantage of being in Southern California, so produce is pretty easy, but we have been able to make our produce pretty very organic and local by finding a supplier who has the same values inherently as Real Food Challenge kind of does. So a supplier that already thinks that local and organic food is really important for a sustainable economy. So we have no issues with that. We've been having trouble switching to beef, like humane beef, because I haven't utilized many of the techniques that Clarissa was just talking about, switching different items to cheaper items to balance out more expensive things. And so we had to raise the price of our humane hamburgers, which we just brought in, by like $6 from what it was originally. And unfortunately, that's not working. They're just not selling as well, even though we did a bunch of campaigns about why grass-fed and humane beef is better. And we had the producers come to Occidental and meet with some of the students, but I think it's just the price is too prohibitive for many people. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say, I guess.
Oh, Sammy, thanks for sharing those stories with us. Does anyone have any questions about how Product Shift has been working out at Occidental? Or any ideas that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, what I'm really curious to know is if anyone's had successful switches to humane food. We have some chicken, but we haven't been able to have a standardized humane meat program going on here. We will do special meals every once in a while that have like organic chicken, but nothing like we don't serve burgers every day that are humane. And if anyone has been able to do that successfully, I'd be really curious to know how you're able to get it at a good price and also to get students to know why it's more important.
Well, I see a question here from Casey, or a suggestion here, idea from Casey at University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, to ask if you considered adding some grass-fed beef to replace some of the beef in your hamburgers, so you're increasing the overall percentage without replacing the whole patty. Also a suggestion from Angela, and I've heard this as well, that you can mix kind of higher quality meat with mushrooms or soy, and it can help to keep the cost low.
We haven't tried that yet, but that's a good suggestion. I'll run that by the executive chef and see what he thinks. Oh, also I see that someone's asking if we're self-operated, and we are self-operated. But yeah, thanks for the suggestion.
Well, that's great. There's also an opportunity, which I'm going to send out to you all and follow up to this meeting, that is called the Better Burger Challenge. It's put out by an organization called Friends of the Earth that has a ton of different suggestions for how to integrate more humanely raised meat into burgers on campus without increasing costs. That could be a cool thing to keep an eye out for as well. Cool. Any other questions or suggestions? Cool. There's a suggestion from Katrina at Fort Lewis College, where they work with a group called Farm Forward, who can look at what your school purchases and help you to shift to more humane products. Farm Forward is a great resource, and if anyone is interested in connecting with them, feel free to reach out to calculatorwithachallenge.org and we can connect you. They work especially around sourcing humane meat and poultry and eggs on campuses.
Oops, sorry, I was on mute again, I think. But yeah, we're in contact with Farm Forward. He's helping us. I guess it's more just getting the students to actually buy it is what we're struggling with. But yeah, my job is dedicated to product shifting. Yeah, in response to Angela's question. Okay, well, anyway, thank you all for your suggestions. And you can also shoot me an email if you have any questions about what we've done here to improve our score. Who funds my position? The campus dining does.
Cool. And
Awesome.
since we have you on too, Sammy, you mentioned that you had like a debt system for your dining hall. I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit how that works.
We have what?
A little bit more. I think you were saying
The debit system?
Yeah, the debit system.
Yeah. So rather than the standard, or I don't know how many schools do this, but I think it's more common to swipe your card and be able to get whatever you want in the dining hall. Instead, we have a per item system where it's kind of more like a store. You pick up what you want in the dining hall, like you'll get a plate of food, and then depending on the color of the plate, which means it came from a certain station, or if it's an apple or, you know, Justin's peanut butter cups or something, at the registers, they'll swipe your card and just put in how much it costs. So they have buttons.
Well,
to Monica, oh, sorry. Should I answer?
Nope, go ahead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Monica, we do have that's the main thing is, depending on who I'm talking to, there's a pushback. So when we have the meetings, every once in a while where we all get together and talk about things to switch, people are all very supportive of Real Food Challenge, but we have to be realistic about keeping the budget so that we don't incur debt. So there's a little bit of pushback just to make sure that we aren't losing money, but nobody ever questions the importance of sustainable food, if that answers your question.
Great. Any final questions? Cool. So Sammy's shared their email address if any of you want to reach out. But just to summarize some of what we heard from both Clarissa and Sammy, there is a lot of opportunity for making product shifts, especially looking into Real Food Calculator results as a way to identify ones that might be higher impact. It sounds like cost can sometimes be a challenge when it comes to making product shifts, so thinking about different cost-saving options like switching to generic cereals, or like shifting only a percentage of a certain product can be some strategies to address that. We also heard about some of the challenges with distribution, and that sometimes you have to really get into the nitty-gritty logistics of like how much volume would your campus need to purchase in order to make it worthwhile for a vendor to come visit your campus or bring products to your campus. And that being in really open communication with dining staff and organizing them in a way that they really have buy-in. Like Cindy, you were saying, they never question the importance of real food. Those are really important in order for us to, to really bring people onto our team and advocate for real food on campus, especially to work through some of these more challenging questions. And then really being active and building relationships and doing that research and being in communication with folks in dining and directly with the producers as well and the vendors, and sometimes also other partners and facilitators like Farm Forward or the Better Burger Challenge, who might be able to help with some of with additional resources in making those shifts. Cool. So with that, hopefully that's given you all some insight and interesting ideas to think about, whether you're a campus that has formally committed to real food and is looking to make changes in purchasing, or whether you're a campus that's interested in stepping into that process. So I see a couple other questions here, but I want to keep us moving forward and we'll address those questions at the end. So we're going to wrap up with one final case study, which is about assessment transition and sharing results. So we talked a little bit about writing reports for product shifts, but at the end of finishing a real food calculator assessment, you're going to have results on what percentage of real food you purchased. And the next piece of the puzzle comes in figuring out how do you share those results with the campus? How do you share them with your team? How do you share them with folks in dining? How do you let people know where you're at in terms of real food? And how do you then use that to inform and shape product shifts? It's also important as we move towards the end of the semester, which is hard to believe, to think about how do we institutionalize the process of running the calculator on campus so that you in future years or other researchers can step into that research process and be able to pick up right where you left off without having to repeat the research that's already been done and building on all of the best practices that you've learned through this really intense process that you all have just been part of. And so I'm going to turn it over to Katrina, who is the lead calculator researcher at Fort Lewis College, to share about their process of writing reports, sharing results, and institutionalizing the process of running the real food calculator at their specific college. So Katrina, I'm going to turn it over to you for around 5 minutes.
Cool. All right. So Hannah asked me to just talk about how we do an assessment every year with our calculator results. So every year, once we get all of our calculator results back, we put together this whole assessment that takes into account like the results that we got, and then we analyze all of it so that we can find holes in it on our real food and stuff like that. And so we share that out with the whole school as we put it on our environmental center website, and we share it with the president of our school so that we can show that we're making improvements at the environmental center and at the Real Food Challenge. Then we also share it with our dining center so that we can show them where we need to improve. So some examples of that would be like the last report, we found that we don't have any fair trade items or any humane items, and so that's a big hole in our real percentage, and that our dining people tend to just focus on organic food, and so we've been talking to them about that and how we need to focus more on other categories as well. So that's a really cool way to be able to actually give them data and like proof that you need to focus more on other categories. So yeah, that's what we do when it comes to the report every year. And then another thing that we've been working on is, since I've been doing the calculator for a couple years, once I graduate, I want the kids who are coming into as part of the Real Food Challenge to be able to actually do the calculator without having to, the first year is always kind of really hard to figure everything out. And so if I put together this whole thing to make it so it's not so confusing their first year, so I've just been putting together this whole toolbox and like checklist so that kids coming in can just jump right in and be able to do the calculator assessment without any difficulties. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted me to address?
Katrina, can you speak a little bit to how you share the report or the results?
Yeah, so mostly we haven't actually shared this one for this year. We're still finishing it up. But in the past years, we usually just like hand deliver it to the president of our school so she can see what we've been working on. Then we post it on the website for the environmental center. And then we also have like little presentations in front of our Real Food Challenge task force, which is like the dining hall, then the environmental center, and like different local farms. And so we'll do a little presentation regarding all of the results that we have and what we need to work on. So that's usually how we, share it out.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. Does anyone have questions for Katrina and about what they do at Fort Lewis College? Cool. Well, something that I think is really striking and something that I've been hearing from a lot of you who are doing research this semester is this process of really keeping track of what processes you use on campus to run the calculator, writing up those resources and being able to share them with researchers in future years, and also being able to really share out the results that you all have been working on so hard to be able to hold the campus accountable to the changes that they're making. And get people really excited about all of the work that's happening to bring real food to campus. So thanks, Katrina, for sharing that with us and for all of the incredible work that you and your team are doing. to bring real food to Fort Lewis.
Thank you.
And
yeah, before you sign
sure.
off, I'm interested in hearing, Katrina, you mentioned that you're setting up a toolbox and like a checklist, and I was wondering if you can speak a little bit about like what's included in that.
So a lot of what's included in that is just little shortcuts that I've learned in the couple of years that I've been doing the calculator, and also like a couple spreadsheets that I've set up on like Excel and stuff like that, so that it has like little drop down arrows so that you don't have to get everything perfectly into the spreadsheet, so that the calculator will accept it. So it's already programmed to fix things like that. So that's what I've been doing so far. I haven't finished it yet because I still have another year before I graduate. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been working on.
Cool. Very cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Katrina, if anyone has any questions, would it be okay for them to reach out to you?
Of
About the
course, I'll
process?
type your email in.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Cool. There's a question here for you, Katrina, from Maya at Florida Gulf Coast University. Is your president involved in the Real Food Challenge, or did showing them the results make them more involved?
She's not actually involved. I mean, she likes to hear about what's going on at the Environmental Center because we get funding from the school. But she is interested in the Real Food Challenge, and she's signed off on it, so she's invested in it as well. But she's not really involved in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point here. It's a great way to build in more buy-in and support by sharing exciting updates, because presidents often only hear the things that are going wrong on campus and the fires they need to put out and the things they need to fix. So getting an update on great initiatives that are happening on campus is often something that they're really excited about. Cool, cool. All right, I'm going to turn it back to you, Rosie. Thanks so much, Katrina, and also Sammy and Clarissa for sharing about what this looks like on campus.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to do, or we're going to have some more open time for just like general questions and just like troubleshooting. So I think a lot of that has been happening throughout, but these are questions that you can refer to Hannah and I in this portion. And I think to start us off, I saw a question in the chat, a question about third-party certification. So what if a company is small and practices sustainable farming, but cannot afford a third-party certification? Could any of their food qualify as real food? Yeah, that's a great question. Right, like certifications, you know, people have to like put down money for that, and sometimes it's not feasible for small farmers to do that. But the category where like there's most opportunity for small farmers is in the local and community based. So that is one category in our real food guide and like the values and standards that doesn't require certification. Cool. And if there are any more questions or like follow up around what I just said, feel free to write down in the chat box.
Cool. I see a question here. How would you enter the code for such a vendor? And so that would be likely, it would be one of the local and community-based descriptions. It doesn't require the produce to be organic, and it does mean the farm would have to be located within 250 miles of the university in order for them to qualify as real food without having a certification.
Right, so they could qualify for real food, but it wouldn't be under organic, it would be under local and community-based, but they would still have that qualification as real food.
Well, I also saw a question about the annual progress report. This is something for all signatory campuses, so any campuses that has signed the Real Food Campus commitment, committed to at least 20% real food by 2020, will need to write up a formal annual progress report to say where you're at in terms of real food purchasing. And we have templates for these reports. You can find them on the Real Food Challenge website. We'll also be sending out an email within the next few weeks to all signatory campuses with a reminder and with the template for that report. That's a good thing for y'all to have on your radar. And an opportunity to share your calculator results. And if your interns are only set until the first week of May, then that would be the time for making sure that you have everything you need for the spring semester done, which would include your calculator assessment and your annual progress report. So you all would need to make these adjustments to what the timeline of your own semester on campus is. And if you have concerns about meeting those deadlines, definitely reach out to us as soon as possible.
Cool. Okay, so I think we have just like 1 minute to see if there are any other questions that come up. And well, maybe the last thing that we're going to do tonight is looking at the timeline. So potentially that could also get some questions on that.
Great. I'll answer one question that's just come up here. There are 20 of you running the calculator, part of a class, University of Indiana, or Indiana University. Do you all do exit surveys or just one? Only one of you will need to do the exit survey. That's a great question. So if you have multiple people on your research team, there just needs to be one exit survey for the campus. Although if more than one of you are interested in filling it out to provide additional feedback, you're more than welcome to do so. Maybe Rosie, let's jump to the last slide.
Sounds good.
Cool. So just a reminder of our timeline, one more. All of you should be actively researching and beginning to wrap up your assessments. This means that your baseline surveys, assessment plans, and process of gathering your data should all be complete. I know there were a couple of outstanding baseline surveys and assessment plans that had some issues with approval. So if you're one of those, definitely reach out to us so we can get that sorted as soon as possible. Next slide. Cool, so a reminder of what we looked at earlier, the first research deadline of having all of your data doing the self-check and upload is April 21st, and the second one is May 12th. The annual progress report is due June 1st. So keep those deadlines in mind. Up next.
Cool, and as a reminder, this little graphic is in the syllabus as well, for you guys to look back to.
Cool, so as a reminder, to finish your assessment, you need your data reviewed from yourself and uploaded by April 21st or May 12th. And then you'll need to complete the expert process, which includes a review with us and making any needed revisions, and then filling out the exit survey before your results will be approved. If you need support in this process, the calculator cohort contact list which we can link in the email again, is a list of everyone who's part of the Real Food Calculator cohort this spring. And so they're all current researchers. You can reach out to individual campuses, or if anyone asked a particular question that struck you, you can reach back out to them for more resources. You can also reach out directly to Rosie and I, the Calculator support team, calculator@realfoodchallenge.org. We're the best resource for really technical questions, like certifications that you're not sure where they qualify, any issues that you have with the upload process, or any questions you have about the review process. The Real Food Calculator listserv includes everyone on this call, as well as many other researchers from across the country who are running the Real Food Calculator, part of your larger team. And so if you have more strategy-related questions, you want some best practices for meeting with your dining manager, or looking for ideas for how to write reports, or you're curious if someone's interacted with a particular vendor or distributor before, this is an incredible resource of calculator researchers from across the country who can support you in the research process. Cool, and with that, maybe I'll turn it to you, Rosie, to close us out.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. Our last cohort meeting of the semester. Tears. But Hannah and I are still here on the other end, able to support you guys. And right, Hannah just listed all the amazing resources and the community of students that are also doing the same thing that you're doing. They're working on research. They're trying to get more real food onto their campus. Great. So what we'll be doing after this is sending out some follow-up resources. One is the researcher data checklist for you to kind of like pre-screen your data before you send it off to us. And also along with some of the other things that Hannah mentioned around the contact list sheet and emails. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Casey. Appreciate the appreciation. Okay, and getting a question, if you get some sample reports sent out by RFC researchers. Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email. I'm just making a note. Awesome. Thanks so much, you guys, for participating every week, not every week, but every meeting in this space. And we should also be following up on ways that we can improve this experience for future researchers. All right, have a lovely night, and we'll be talking to you in the future.
Awesome, thanks so much. Good luck with the final steps.
All right, bye guys.